There's a version of yourself you had planned on being by now. Not a dramatic version, not a fantasy, just a quietly better one. Someone who had figured a few more things out, made a few fewer of the same mistakes, arrived at this particular Tuesday feeling a little more settled and a little less like she's still working out problems she thought she'd solved years ago. Instead, here you are, with the same recurring argument you've been having with yourself since your mid-20s. The same pattern in relationships you can see from the outside, but somehow keep repeating from the inside. The same unfinished thing sitting on the same shelf where you put it last time you ran out of steam. Not broken, exactly, just cracked in places, repaired unevenly, still bearing the evidence of every drop, every collision, every moment that didn't go the way you thought it would. You've done the work, you've read the books, done the therapy, had the honest conversations with yourself, and you still wake up sometimes and find the crack right where you left it, not healed so much as managed, still there, still visible. Here's the question nobody asks about that crack. What if it was never supposed to disappear? In 16th century Japan, a broken tea bowl was not discarded. It was repaired, but not with invisible adhesive, not in a way designed to make the break disappear. It was repaired with lacquer mixed with gold, or silver, or platinum, so that the repair itself became visible, deliberate, beautiful. The philosophy behind this practice is called Kintsugi, golden joinery, and its central claim is one of the most quietly radical ideas in the history of objects, that a thing broken and repaired is not lesser than a thing that was never broken. It is different, it carries more history, and in some specific unmistakable sense, it is more itself than it was before the break. This wasn't a philosophy of consolation, a kind way of making the best of a damaged thing. It was an aesthetic position, that the break, honestly repaired, is more interesting, more honest, more beautiful than the unmarked surface that preceded it. That the gold in the crack is not camouflage. It's the point. And once you see what Kintsugi is actually saying, about bowls, about people, about the life that keeps accumulating its own visible repairs, some things start to look very different. Chapter 1. The break is part of the bowl. The first and most fundamental thing Kintsugi teaches is also the one that takes the longest to actually believe. The break happened, and it is now part of the object's permanent story, and no amount of invisible repair changes that fact. A bowl repaired with clear adhesive, set back on the shelf, looks unbroken, but it carries the break invisibly, a structural weakness, a hidden history, a thing that happened and was quietly denied. The Kintsugi bowl carries the same break visibly, in gold, and is no weaker for the visibility. The crack is there in both cases. The only difference is whether it's acknowledged. Applied to a life, the argument that changed a relationship, the year that went sideways, the decision that cost more than expected, these things happened. They are now part of the permanent record of who you are. The invisible repair approach tries to get back to the surface that existed before the break, to resume as if it didn't happen. The Kintsugi approach acknowledges that the before is gone, the break is real, and what comes after is a different version of the object. Not a lesser one, not a better one, just an honest one that carries its full history. This reframes what fixing means entirely, not returning to the state before the break, integrating the break into something that continues forward. The simple thing to sit with today. Identify one crack you've been trying to make invisible, one thing you've been repairing in a way that hides the repair rather than acknowledges it, not to display it or dwell on it, just to know it's there, and to let it be part of the story rather than a deviation from it. What you do with the crack once you've acknowledged it is the subject of the next chapter. Chapter 2. Gold takes time to set. Kintsugi is not a quick repair. The lacquer mixed with gold or silver must be applied in layers, each layer allowed to fully cure before the next is added. The process takes weeks, sometimes months. A bowl rushed through repair will hold imperfectly. The gold will crack again. The layers won't bond. The repair will fail where it was most needed. This is the piece of Kintsugi that most life repair attempts skip entirely. The curing time. The period between acknowledging a break and the repair being complete, during which the work has been done but the result isn't yet visible, and patience is the only available action. We tend to experience this period as failure. The break was addressed, the repair was attempted, and yet things still don't look the way they're supposed to. The relationship is still awkward. The habit is still inconsistent. The thing that was supposed to be better is still noticeably fragile. And because the repair isn't visibly complete, we conclude the repair didn't work and try something else or give up entirely, which is exactly the moment before the layers would have bonded. In traditional Japanese craft, the concept of shokunin, the master craftsperson, carries an implicit acceptance of time as a material. Not dead time, not wasted time, but active time in which the work continues without visible progress. The patience is the skill as much as the technique. The takeaway: if you're in a period of invisible progress, where the work has been done but the repair isn't yet visible, resist the conclusion that it isn't working. Some things bond slowly. The layer is there, it just hasn't fully set. There's something Kintsugi does that no other repair philosophy does, and it's the piece that changes everything. Chapter 3. Making the repair visible. The most radical act in Kintsugi isn't the repair. It's the decision to make the repair visible, to run gold into the crack rather than matching the original glaze so that anyone who holds the bowl can see exactly where it broke and exactly where it was mended. This is a choice, a deliberate aesthetic and philosophical decision that the break, acknowledged and repaired, deserves to be seen rather than hidden, that the object's history, including its damage, is more interesting than the fiction of an undamaged surface. Applied to a life, this is the decision to stop pretending the hard years didn't happen, to stop presenting a version of yourself that skips the chapter where things fell apart, to let the repair be visible not as a confession of weakness, but as evidence of having gone through something real and come out the other side of it. This doesn't mean sharing everything with everyone. The Kintsugi bowl doesn't announce its break. It simply doesn't hide it. There's a difference between broadcasting damage and not concealing it, between making the crack a defining feature and simply allowing it to be part of the full picture. The people who tend to move through the world with the most ease aren't the ones who appear most intact. They're the ones who seem most honest about their particular shape, including the repairs. The gold in the crack doesn't draw attention to the damage, it draws attention to the survival. The takeaway: identify one repaired break you've been treating as something to conceal rather than something to carry honestly. You don't have to display it, just stop hiding it from yourself. Before the most counterintuitive chapter, the one about what happens when the bowl breaks again, let me tell you about something that Kintsugi does to the value of an object that almost nothing else can. Chapter 4. The break increases the value. Here is the claim that seems most impossible and turns out to be most true. A bowl repaired with Kintsugi is typically worth more than the same bowl undamaged. Not as a metaphor, literally. In the market for Japanese ceramics, a Kintsugi repaired piece commands a premium over an identical unbroken piece because the Kintsugi repair is itself an art form, and because a bowl that carries its history honestly carries a depth of character that an unbroken bowl cannot. The break, honestly repaired, adds value, not despite the damage, because of it. This is almost impossible to believe if you've spent years operating under the assumption that damage is something to minimize, conceal, and overcome as quickly as possible, that the goal is to return to the unbroken surface as efficiently as you can. The Kintsugi position says the unbroken surface was never the most valuable version of the object. The version with the full history, honestly carried, is. Applied to a person, the years that were hard, the relationships that ended badly, the decisions that had to be unmade, these don't reduce the value of the person who carries them. They increase the depth, not automatically, not simply by suffering, but by being carried honestly, integrated rather than suppressed, repaired visibly rather than hidden. The takeaway: what is the break in your own history that you've been treating as a reduction, as something that makes you worth less than the unbroken version you might have been? And what would it mean to treat it instead as the thing that makes you more complex, more honest, more yourself? This next chapter is the hardest one, and the most important one. Chapter 5. The bowl that breaks again. A Kintsugi bowl can break again. After all the patience, all the layers, all the gold, it can fall from the shelf a second time, or a third, and break along a different line entirely. And the Kintsugi response to that is exactly the same as it was the first time. Repair it. Add more gold. Let it cure. There is no version of the Kintsugi philosophy that says a bowl only gets one break. There's no limit implied on how many times the repair can happen, how many lines of gold can accumulate across a surface, how many breaks a single object can honestly carry and still be considered whole. This is the piece that most self-improvement frameworks quietly imply but never state, that there is a finite number of times you're allowed to fall apart before the repair stops. being a sign of resilience, and starts being a sign of something unfixable. That at some point, the breaks accumulate past the threshold of what can be recovered from. Kintsugi has no such threshold. An object with many repairs, many lines of gold, is not an object in the process of failing. It is an object with an extraordinarily rich history, one that has been through more, survived more, been mended more times than most objects ever are. Its surface is more complex than a surface that has never been tested. Its gold is more abundant, its history is more visible, and, in the truest sense of the word, more real. The takeaway: if this is not the first time, if the crack you're currently repairing has cracked before, in the same place or a different one, that is not evidence that the repair is futile. It's evidence that you've been here before and are still here. The additional line of gold doesn't diminish the surface, it adds to it. There's one final thing Kintsugi teaches, and it's the one that reframes everything else. Chapter 6. The bowl was always going to break. Here is the quietest and most radical claim in all of Kintsugi. The break was not an accident that interrupted the bowl's life. It was always going to happen. Every ceramic object that is genuinely used, that is picked up and put down, filled and emptied, held by warm hands and set on hard surfaces, lived with, will eventually break. The break is not a failure of the object. It is proof that the object was actually used. A bowl that never breaks spent its whole life on a shelf. A bowl with gold in its cracks spent its life being a bowl. Applied to a life, the breaks are not interruptions in the story of who you were supposed to be. They are proof that you were actually living, that things were real enough to hurt, that you cared enough about something to be damaged when it didn't go the way you hoped, that you were present enough and vulnerable enough for the breaks to actually reach you. A life without visible repairs is not a life that avoided damage. It's a life that avoided contact. The cracks are where the living happened. The gold is what you chose to do about it. And the bowl, still whole, still usable, still being filled and emptied and held in warm hands, is the evidence that none of the breaks were the last one. The takeaway, and the one to carry forward. The next time you find yourself standing in front of another crack, another thing that didn't hold the way you hoped, try to remember that this is not the interruption of your life. It's your life, and the gold is yours to choose. You are standing in front of a crack. Maybe it's new, something that just broke open in the last few weeks, still raw at the edges. Maybe it's old, a repair you made years ago that you've been maintaining ever since. Gold that's held but never quite let you forget the break underneath it. Maybe it's one you've stopped looking at directly, the way you stop seeing certain things when they've been in the same place long enough. Whatever it is part of you now, permanent, visible, if you let it be, honest, in a way that the unmarked surface never quite was. You were always going to crack here. The life that was real enough to break things was always going to leave marks. And the repair, careful, patient, layered in gold, was always going to make you more interesting than the version of yourself that arrived untested at this particular Tuesday. The bowl is still whole. The gold is yours, and there is nothing wrong with the shape you're in. If this felt like something your life needed to hear, there's more waiting for you here.